Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's event. We're here to celebrate a partnership between CQUniversity and BMA, specifically BMA's $1.8 million commitment to funding a chair in Indigenous engagement, as well as a number of scholarships for Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. And before we begin proceedings, I'd like to invite Wade Mann of the Darumbal to welcome us to country.
My name's Wade Mann. I'm a traditional owner for the land we meet today, the Dumble people. The Dumble people have been the traditional owners here for the past 50,000 years. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge all of our elders here on the side as well, and our elders past and present. Our elders are the keepers of our secrets, of the stories of our past, and lead our young ones into the future. So our elders are the most important people in our community, as we all know. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Buckadoo. Buckadoo is our guide, our creator, our maker, the maker of all our animals, our land, the sea, and the Dumble people. So I'd also like to acknowledge Budaroo. Budaroo is the green tree frog, is our totem, part of our dreaming. So on behalf of the Dumble people, I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'd like to acknowledge our Mayor, Mr. Brad Carter, and our Chancellor, our Vice Chancellor, and all the other distinguished guests here. I think what is happening here today, which is part of, for Indigenous people, part of employment and education and employment. I think employment is one of the most important things in our community, which we need to address. And by the merger of BMA and the university here, I think it's going to put us in good step to have our people into jobs, into good paying jobs. So yeah, on behalf of the Dumble people, I'd like to welcome you all here today, and I'd like to introduce our dancers, the Wiru Dance Troupe, which means young men, and they're going to perform a Welcome to Country dance for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, boys, and thank you, Wade. I think we all feel very welcome now. So I just wanted to, before we get proceedings underway and have our speakers from the university and BMA, I just wanted to acknowledge a few people. It's obviously a wonderful occasion and we're really grateful that everyone could come and commemorate it with us. I'd like to just acknowledge the University Chancellor, Mr. Rennie Fritchie, the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Scott Bowman and his executive. I'd like to welcome BMA Asset President, Mr. Stephen Dumble, and all other BMA representatives here today. We thank you for visiting us to help celebrate the partnership. I'd also like to acknowledge the Federal Member for Flynn, Mr. Ken O'Dowd, the State Member for Keppel, Mr. Bruce Young, the Mayor of Rockhampton Region, Councillor Brad Carter. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous elders present here today. We're very grateful to have you here. Let me also acknowledge our friends from Central Queensland Indigenous Development, Nullu Yumba, and all other Indigenous community representatives present here today. In addition, I'd like to acknowledge the Institute Director of Central Queensland TAFE, Mr. Gary Kinnan and his staff. Thanks for being with us today. And last but not least, let me acknowledge all University Council members, all staff, students and friends of the University. It's great to have your presence here today. I'd now like to invite the Chancellor, Mr. Rennie Fritchie, to say a few words on behalf of the University.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would describe today as a genuinely, I was going to say breathtaking, and I think it is breathtaking, but a game changer. And I firmly believe that. This is a coming together of two organisations pursuing their own strategic plans, and it's a situation where the two strategic plans in the areas that we talk about today absolutely coincide. So a very important partnership between industry on the one hand and the university on the other. Chris already mentioned that this latest partnership has two main elements. The first is that BMA has signed an agreement with the university to support the inaugural Pro-Vice Chancellor Indigenous Engagement and the BMA Chair of Indigenous Engagement over a 5-year term. And that's truly groundbreaking for both our organisations. And the second part of it is that BMA and CQUniversity have developed a scholarship program that's going to exist over the next 5 years. If I go to the first element first, to fill that in just a little bit, Professor Bronwyn Fredericks, whom you'll be meeting soon, has been appointed to this new role. And she's going to be responsible for the strategic planning and the operations of the Indigenous group within the university. A key accountability is to achieve better access, better participation and better employment prospects for Indigenous people. And BMA is providing a significant contribution to that, $150,000 per year for the next 5 years. The partnership supports BMA's Indigenous plan and also our Indigenous plan, and particularly in relation to addressing some of the disadvantaged issues among Indigenous people. Collectively, we want to provide better access for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people, and as a result of that, to increase the participation rates in vocational education and training as well as university. We want to improve retention and completion rates for Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders in those areas that I just mentioned, and as a result of that, to improve retention and improve improve employment rates of Aboriginal people. Already CQUniversity has twice the participation rate of Aboriginal students at our university as the university average across Australia, but we see that as only a start, and we'd like to do a lot better than that. Professor Bronwyn Fredericks is not new to our area. She knows Rockhampton very well, and she has family members here, and she's lived here in the past. She's a Murray woman from southeast Queensland and was most recently a Principal Research Fellow and Associate Professor within Queensland University of Technology's Faculty of Health. She brings to the role almost 30 years of combined experience in academia, research, Indigenous health and community services, and will be a very strong contributor to our university. If we look at the second element then of this partnership, the program includes community scholarships, and there'll be 10 of them per year for 5 years, for students who have links to the communities in BMA's footprint. Moranbah, Dysart, Blackwater, Emerald Capella, Sabrina, Hay Point and Gladstone. And in addition to that, up to 5 BMA Indigenous scholarships per year for 5 years for students who reside in BMA's communities of interest and or are members of the traditional owner groups within BMA's footprint. The scholarships are designed to influence skill shortages and build capacity in key service areas of BMA's communities. And in line with this aim, scholarships are awarded to students studying non-mining disciplines like health, education and business. And I see that as a true breakthrough. In other words, what BMA are doing is looking at the sustainability of the communities in which they are, and this is exactly what the university are looking at as well. So that program, those 15 scholarships, they're $5,000 per student per year, and that goes for the next 5 years. And that adds up to a sum of up to 1.1 million, so it's truly significant. And if you add both those initiatives together, then we're looking at something like $1.8 million worth. So the combined programs will encourage increased enrolments from people who identify themselves as being disadvantaged in whatever form that is. I'd like to congratulate BMA. I think as good corporate citizenship goes, and also pursuing sustainability in the areas in which they operate, I think they're doing a fantastic job, and frankly we're delighted to work with them and look forward to a continuing and long partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. I'd now like to welcome Mr Stephen Dumble, Asset President BMA, to say a few words.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon and welcome to everybody. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the Darumbal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and thank Wade, I'm not sure where he is, for his welcome to country. And certainly like to acknowledge all of the elders and other representatives of traditional owner groups. I'd also like to again acknowledge some of our other distinguished guests, Mr Brad Carter, Mr Ken O'Dowd, Mr Rennie Fritchie, Scott Bowman, the Vice-Chancellor of the CQUniversity, Dr Bronwyn Fredericks, and all of our other friends and distinguished guests. BMA and in fact both of our shareholders, BHP Billiton and Mitsubishi, have a proud history of association with the mining communities of central Queensland. And we remain the largest employer in this region and the largest mining company in this part of the world. That history that I spoke about is based on a proven record of partnering with our stakeholders such as the CQU. And in particular, partnering to address social needs and to build livable and sustainable communities. That's our background, and that's what we're going to continue to build off. We in our business have a strong and exciting future. Currently in Queensland alone, in this part of the world, we have something of the order of $10 billion worth of capital projects under execution, including new mines at Daunia and Cavill Ridge. And with this in mind, our focus on building a positive, sustainable future, not only for our business but also for the communities in this region, is very important. The investments that we make, the mines that we build, the projects that we develop, will all have a long life and will build on, that long history of association that we have with the region, and hence, this view around sustainability is critically important for us. A critical part of that future for us is to build a competitive business. We're not only aiming to be a bigger business but a more competitive one. And when we talk about competition, we're not just talking about in our markets and with our coal mining competitors, but most particularly, we're specifically talking about the competition for people. And we need the brand and we need the support of our stakeholders in our region to not only to compete for those people, but also to continue to ensure the ongoing support of all of our critical stakeholders. The values that guide our business each day are the values that are important to us when we make decisions such as the one we're announcing today. They set out for us what we can expect from each other, and importantly, in terms of this partnership, what the Central Queensland University can expect from us. Operationally, our values are about embracing safety and about performance as we strive to achieve results. But we understand that through delivering superior results for our shareholders, we can provide more opportunities, such as the ones that we're talking about today, and particularly opportunity through the good fortune that we have in our industry for some of the less fortunate people in our communities. To build sustainable communities, we have to continue to improve educational standards and employment pathways. And this is why we want to build on our collaboration with Central Queensland University. CQU students have a number of professional pathways already to employment with BMA, including our scholarship program, our vocational student program, our cooperative engineering students program, our cadets program, and through the BHP Billiton Graduate Program. This new partnership is further demonstration of our commitment and our strong belief that we can create more opportunities and support young and mature age people as they progress through education opportunities into the broader workforce in our region. In particular, we feel very confident about this partnership as well. BMA and CQU share a commitment to the Indigenous people of Central Queensland, particularly when it comes to addressing disadvantage in education and employment. Professor Fredericks' role as the BMA Chair in Indigenous engagement will provide regional leadership in engaging the Indigenous people in this region and in determining how we can deliver the outcomes that we're talking about today. Our aim is to deliver better educational outcomes on the ground, giving Indigenous people in our community the skills, the experience and the opportunities that come with higher education and training. Professor Fredericks has a distinguished and very relevant background in Indigenous engagement and education, and we're most pleased that she's accepted this role, and I congratulate her on her appointment. We're very much looking forward, to the benefits that your leadership will bring, Bronwyn, and as I said the other night, most looking forward in a few years' time to be able to look back on what we've been able to achieve together. As the Chancellor mentioned earlier, in addition to supporting this new position, we're also supporting up to 75 Indigenous and non-Indigenous student scholarships with links to the Bowen Basin over the next 5 years. This financial support that we're able to provide will make tertiary studies more affordable and accessible for for people who may otherwise not have had that opportunity. And through targeting local students, and in particular those students enrolling in non-mining disciplines, we're able to build capacity in key service areas like health, education and business. Key service areas that are critical to the future success and sustainability of communities in our region. And again, this further demonstrates our association and our commitment to invest in Central Queensland and to build a future where our towns are full of families, our schools are full of children, and our essential services are well supplied with high quality professionals that we've grown and developed in the region. I'd like to close again by just saying how thrilled we are to have this opportunity. I'd like to thank the Central Queensland University for the opportunity to partner. And as I said, we're proud and excited to be here, and we look forward to seeing the fruits of this partnership emerge over the next few years. So thank you very much.
I'd now finally like to hand over to Professor Bronwyn Fredericks. She's CQ University's new Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Indigenous Engagement, and thanks to BMA, she's also holding the dual role of BMA Chair in Indigenous Engagement. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me up there, Joan? I wish to begin with acknowledging the Darumbal people on whose land I'm formally standing today to speak for the first time. I also wish to thank members of the Fitzroy Basin Elders for coming along today, and with that I also acknowledge that we have with us today not only members of the Darumbal people, but members of the Wapabara, members of the Gungaloo, members of the Bidjara, Kunaloo, and many other groups, Garang from south of here, that are here today in the audience to be part of this celebration today. I want to start by telling you that as I walked from my house to my car this morning along my garden path, I saw a small budaroo, a small green tree frog. Where I live right now, it backs onto a reserve and it's a bit wet and quite lush. Bit different to where I lived before at Keppel Sands. The budaroo, as we've heard this morning from Wade, is a totem of the Darumbal people. And in the case this morning, as I gently walked around budaroo, I was kind of offered a humbling reminder that for the past 20 years, since 1992, I've lived on and off this country, undertaking work, undertaking my studies at this very university, and working with communities, not just here in Rockhampton, but across Central Queensland. And I now stand before you as the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Indigenous Engagement and the BMA Chair in Indigenous Engagement at CQUniversity. I say to you that this initiative will make a difference. I intend to make it a difference. And those people who have worked with me on and off for 20 years know that I don't do things half-heartedly. There are people here that I've worked with on and off over the last 20 years. I can see Bob Blair in front of me, I can see Bob Muir, I can see Auntie Margie to the right, who worked with me in terms of getting Bidgety off the ground. I can see previous students, Joan Stevenson up there on the ledge. So it's fantastic that you're all here today and that you're supporting this initiative. I want to link this to Closing the Gap. In 2007, the National Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation, also known as NACCHO, made an arrangement or a deal with the organisation known as Oxfam. They signed that agreement, which bound them together and co-opted numerous other organisations, institutions, government departments and industry to an agreement titled Closing the Gap. That was in 2007. And that agreement was to close the gap in Indigenous health disparities between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in this country. Those words, closing the gap, have now been utilised to cut across all areas of our society, from housing, health, as I've mentioned, human services, right through to workforce initiatives and employment and training. This BMA and CQUniversity initiative offers opportunity to work within this Close the Gap agenda, to make a real difference, and as Steve said, to get some tangible difference, some tangible outcomes from multiple angles, and I'll speak a little to this. An education, from my experience and that I've witnessed and seen and read about through research, does offer a direct outcome to the lives of Indigenous individuals. This is without a doubt. It provides career options, it provides access to increased income, choices, and other aspects that come from all of this. Research tells us this, it's a fact. This is regardless of whether it's Indigenous or non-Indigenous people. You get an education at TAFE or university, those things are assured. Mightn't be exactly what you want, but they're still guaranteed to be assured. We hope to see these as lived reality here within Central Queensland and played out within this region, where people with an education, either from university or TAFE, and in this case higher education at university, have multiple choices, are given multiple choices, can more readily take up opportunities and earn higher incomes. And I've heard people say, oh, this one's gone off to the mines earning big bungu now. Well, that's a reality for a lot of people. It's better than working and living off welfare. All of this gives people a sense that they can and they are capable of making decisions for themselves, that they can take responsibility for themselves, that they can bring about greater direction in their own lives for themselves. It's what education affords all of us and affords Indigenous people. For Indigenous people, there are also the benefits that are extended to our family members and to the community. So in terms of family, there's greater access to resources within the family unit. It can be more readily shared. There's more capacity to make collective choices that impact around the family and on the whole. And there's also the opportunity to participate in a range of options. Sometimes it might be just someone's so sick, let's get them the medicine. Someone needs their car fixed, let's get the car fixed. How about we all go on a holiday? For many Indigenous people, these options are pretty much non-existent. If the individual then takes their work, takes their education within the community sector and works with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations, it can have huge gains for those organisations. It combines with the skills and knowledge that people within the organisations already have. So you get a blending of skills and knowledge as well as culture within the organisation. And I think that's really powerful when we talk about self-determination and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people doing things for themselves, for ourselves. I also want to make the point here that when Indigenous people graduate from a university or a TAFE, not only as a teacher or a nurse, maybe an engineer or a scientist or a researcher, that we become a nurse and an Aboriginal person or a Torres Strait Islander person. We become an engineer and an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person, or a scientist and an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person. And in my case, I became a teacher and was Aboriginal, and later a researcher who was Aboriginal. I say this because in this regard, we value add to workplaces. We value add to the communities we live in. We don't take away, and often Indigenous people are written and talked about as taking away, taking something or being disadvantaged. In this regard, when we become educated, we also give. We also value add to that place simply because we're there and we are educated. I'll also say to you that non-Indigenous people also begin to know us in different ways, and there's a message here for the non-Indigenous people in the audience. So rather than seeing us and knowing us merely through an unequal service relationship in terms of servicing us as disadvantaged or marginalised or needing help or assistance, we become your colleagues, your peers within the workplace. We change the workplace. We value add to your workplaces too. Okay? And in this, being your co-workers, it also takes some rethinking, some adjustments. This is from non-Indigenous people and also from us as Indigenous people getting used to those roles and taking up our responsibilities too. And this is the practical side of closing the gap and of reconciliation. As this agreement is signed off and the organisations are bound this afternoon, between BMA and CQUniversity, we through our respective organisations make a firm commitment to stand and take action through working together to increase Indigenous education opportunities through CQUniversity. I am hoping that organisations, industry and government will work with us in this commitment too, that others will come on board and we will see these kind of agreements replicated, and that they add to what we're trying to do here and what I, in my leadership role, am going to try and forge ahead with. That we make real difference and we achieve real outcomes. As the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Indigenous Engagement and BMA Chair of Indigenous Engagement, I'll lead this process in the university, and I'll be calling on some of you here that are in the audience and some of the people out in the communities that CQUniversity services and are within the BMA catchment group to join with me in this commitment and help to make this a reality. I want to turn the will and the sentiment into willingness and into action for all of us. In closing now, I turn back to Budaroo, the green tree frog. And as the wet seasons come and go, and comes and goes and comes and goes in the next 5 years, Stephen, and we hear much noise from Budaroo as we hear here, especially during the flood time. I'm hoping that Budaroo just doesn't sit and remind us of who we are and what we were going to do, but that all the croaks and all the noise of the croaks are in recognition and a sign of pleasure of what we're collectively doing to make a change and to make a real difference in closing the gap in education for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thank you.